Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Veterans Corner. I'm State Senator Kevin Witkos, and today we have a very exciting, inspirational Veteran of the Month, Darrell Stark. You might remember Darrell from last year when we had a dedication in the town of Simsbury with Dan Crowley, a former fellow POW in World War II. He was ordered to be surrendered by the U.S. government when we entered into World War II, when the Isles of the Philippines were taken over by the Japanese. So let's now travel to the wonderful town of Stafford and meet Darrell and hear his story. What an incredible story that you have for our viewers today.
Thank you.
Let's go back to now. You, even though now you live on the East Coast, but you were born, what, in the Central Plains in the state of Oklahoma?
I was born in the state of Oklahoma in 1923. My parents were, I guess I could say we lived in poverty most of my life, as most of the people did in Oklahoma during the dust period.
Farmers, right? Is that what you're...
Well, they were farmers, but my father, he worked in the oil field.
Okay.
And we moved a lot, as much as 3 times a year, 4 times a year sometimes, just to survive. And but they were loving people, caring people. Taught us all the necessary things we needed to be good people.
Sure.
And taught us also, as I was to find out later on, how to strive in most difficult times. By the time I was 16 years old, I was on my own pretty much. And I did whatever little work I could do to help my family.
Where were you living then when you were 16?
I was about 16 and...
You still in Oklahoma?
Yep, still in Oklahoma at that time. Then I joined in CCC camps for 6 months, and I went out to Colorado. I spent 6 months there, and it's semi-military.
Okay.
And I liked it. And it kind of instilled in me a desire to join the Army. And
why the Army, if I might ask?
Well, frankly, I didn't even know anything about the Navy.
Okay.
Or anything else.
Well, you're landlocked, so.
Yeah.
Had you ever seen a ship at that point?
Huh?
Had you ever seen a real-life ship in your life growing up in Oklahoma? Probably not.
No, I had not. I'd never seen a ship. And I joined the Army in 1941, on March 5th. My dad had to sign the papers for me to go in.
How old were you?
17.
17, okay.
So he signed the papers for me, and I took a physical, and there were about 50 of us that took the oath. And they said, who would like to go to the Philippines? I held up my hand, me and one other person. And they said, remain where you are and dismiss the rest, to be assigned someplace else. And they told us we had 3 days, and we had to report back to the same place. And 3 days later, I reported back. They gave me a train ticket to take me to San Francisco.
Boot camp?
Huh?
Boot camp?
Nope. I went to San Francisco, and I went to Angel Island, and I received semi-boot camp. Okay. How to say yes, sir, and no, sir. That was about it. Then I was placed on a ship, the Republic. It took 22 days to get over there.
Wow.
And I was assigned to a unit who had never served in the United States of America, the regiment. It was called the Foreign Legion of the United States Army. Mm-hmm. And it was the 31st Infantry Regiment, a part of the Philippine Division. And I was there, and I had boot camp there, in the Philippines.
Okay, in the Philippines.
And it was strictly boot camp. And they taught us how to survive and how to use guns and and I was assigned to a machine gun company as a weapons carrier. And when World War II broke out, we, along with many others, were the first ones to meet the enemy in combat.
Sure, because prior to, everybody looks at December 7th, 1941 as the day that the U.S. attack on Pearl Harbor propelled us into the military. So you were already a member of the military before that even happened.
Absolutely.
It was going on in Europe, but not the U.S.
involvement. Not for us it wasn't going on.
No, not for the U.S. involvement,
no.
right.
Oh, it had been going on in Europe for some time.
Yep.
And but the outfit that I joined was the only infantry outfit, American infantry outfit over there. The rest of our division made up of Filipino scouts.
Did you want to do that division? I mean, how did you decide what you wanted to do in the military? They didn't give you a choice.
I can't give you a specific reason why I wanted to join the Army, but there was.
No, I mean the infantry. Did you say I want to be?
No, I didn't even know I was going into the infantry. I didn't know any branch of the military at that time.
Right.
I was a 17-year-old kid.
Sure. Just went where you were told to go.
Very undereducated, and I just went the way the wind blew.
Okay.
And I liked it. I had good people around me. People had a lot of respect for. And people who did some very, very courageous things during the war.
So you mentioned that you were the first group of American soldiers that saw the first combat with the enemy.
Absolutely.
Tell me what happened, or where were you, what time of day, what was going on?
What happened was they started bombing the Japanese on the same day, but remember, over the international date line, one day it'll be the 8th and the next the 7th.
Right.
And it was the 8th in the Philippines, 7th at Pearl Harbor. But we were caught, I don't think by surprise, but for a 17-year-old, it was a surprise. We were trained for combat, but no one knew what combat was, really.
Right.
And when the war started, all of the American troops, no matter whether it was the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, if they were on the land, they fought there on Bataan. But the Marine Corps didn't get into it at all there until just before the war. Then they were stationed in Craigador.
Mm-hmm.
And we fought the Japanese for 4 months. We ran completely out of supplies. I mean, food, medication, ammunition, everything. And General King surrendered us for humanitarian reasons.
Because we couldn't get any supplies to you. They cut off all of our,
we
basically strangled you guys
absolutely,
until you had
absolutely. And they were cut off completely from resupplying us. And as a result, that's the way we ended up. Mm-hmm. And on April the 9th, he surrendered us. They had the death march. And there were, well, I can't give you a figure, but literally thousands of people died on the death march. Filipinos, Americans. I thought for some time that I was on the death march, but I was in hospital number 2. And we had to march, I think it was about 12 miles, the same route that they did.
Let me ask you a question. So you're on an American base, or a base that was occupied by the Americans and the Filipino troops. And did you raise a white flag that says, were being ordered to be surrendered, and then the Japanese came marching right into the camp and surrounded you? Or how did that whole transition take place?
I don't know whether they raised the right flag, white flag, or exactly how they did surrender. But I know that I was in what they call Hospital Number 2 when they surrendered, if you want to call it a hospital. It was a cot sitting under the trees. If it rained, you got wet. And I was there because I was so sick with malaria, I was almost dying. But I got enough to hold it off. And then I just found out, or no, it was yesterday, that we were the first ones at Cabanatuan. I thought where the biggest prison camp was. But I thought the ones from O'Donnell were there before we were. But Hospital Number 2 and others went to Cabanatuan before O'Donnell did. And we were there for some time. Then
and they called it the Death March because a number of the soldiers, they marched you to
they called it the Death March
prison camp?
Because there were so many people died on that march. Literally thousands. And some of it was total cruelty of the Japanese soldiers. Because I understand that they hated our guts because we killed so many of their people before we were taken captive. And they didn't get food on the Death March. They didn't get medication. But the most important thing they didn't get enough of was water.
Sure.
And they were just sick. Most of them died from just total exhaustion, sickness, and some were killed. You dropped out, you was dead, from what I hear.
Right.
Yep.
And you were marched to what? A prison camp?
I was marched to about 12 miles. We were loaded on trucks, stacked in like sardines, and moved to Bilibid Prison. We were there for a while. Then we were loaded on the freight cars and shipped to Cabanatuan.
And that's where? In Japan?
No, that's in the Philippines.
Okay, still in the Philippines.
And they were at Cabanatuan at the time I was there, bearing an average of 30 people a day. And some days many more. And it came out that they was looking for volunteers to go to another camp. And I volunteered. And my friend says to me, Darrell, why in the hell did you volunteer for something else? I said, there's no place worse than where I am right now. And they sent me to the Val Penal Colony, and that is one of the largest islands there, and it's the southern island. And they sent us to the Val Penal Colony. What it formerly was just that, a penal colony. But they released all the Filipinos and put us in. And there was about 2,000 altogether. And they had a farm that they had made that had about 1,000 acres of land on it that the Filipinos, the prisoners, had farmed before. Right. And we farmed it. And still, we didn't get enough to eat. But the death rate dropped off drastically. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. But the thing is, we had plenty of water. We could clean ourselves. We could take a bath with buckets of water poured on us. It was a place where you could draw water and get on the side and take a bath and clean yourself. The barracks were clean, but the beds we didn't have. We just slept on a cot. And I was barefooted then, and I was barefooted just the beginning of, right up before we were surrendered, I was barefooted because shoes had just rotted out from my feet, and I was barefooted for 4 years almost.
How did you communicate with your captors when they were giving you direction?
I never conversed with them, but you better learn certain parts of the Japanese language.
Sure.
If you didn't, you'd be in serious trouble. And first thing they teach you is how to count, because they give you a number right there. 563. Go Yakaroku Jutan. And that, you better remember that number.
And that was your number?
Yep. And but at that camp there, we didn't have death like we had up there because of the cleanliness, and we got more food, but we didn't get as much as we needed because the Japanese shipped all of it out to go to their troops.
Sure.
And in 1944, I was there until 1944. Then I was transferred back to Manila. And I was on 2 hell ships on that trip from there, Davao to Manila. And I was placed on a hell ship to Japan. And I don't remember the day. I know it was 62 days that we were on the ship.
Wow.
And after 62 days of total hell, we finally arrived in Japan on 26 of 1944.
Do you ever understand why they shipped you from the Philippines to Japan?
Yes, I know entirely.
Why was that?
Slave labor.
Okay.
That's why they sent us. And that's exactly what we were slaves.
What did you do in Japan, or what were you required to do?
I worked in a copper mill and shoveled coal in a furnace. I weighed probably about 95 to 100 pounds. It was cold in the winter and almost no clothing and barefoot. I can't remember how the camp looked there, but the factory I remember. And I remember it well. And the primary reason I remember it is this. The Japanese people at that time weren't getting very much food either, because they were being attacked by bombers at that time. And their food supply was just almost nothing. But an old Japanese man that we worked for, we took his lunch and ate it. And instead of him saying something to us and then having to report it to the authorities, he didn't say anything. And he came to work the next day. He had 2 lunches. He said, 1 for you and 1 for me. And he did that the rest of the time we were there. And I'll jump ahead of myself now and then come back.
Sure.
This man he was just the kindest-hearted person you can ever find. He saved my life. And when I left there, the factory was destroyed by an earthquake. And we were shipped from the city of Yokkaichi to Toyama, Japan.
Is this after the treaty was signed? Or after surrender? Or was this before that?
This is after the surrender on Bataan, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean after the Japanese surrendered to the U.S.
No.
Okay. Hadn't gotten to that point yet.
The war was still going on. And this old man who had been giving us his lunch. And after the factory was destroyed, he gave me a set of chopsticks.
Wow.
I've had those ever since I came back. And I just recently found out that that is a token of love. I didn't know it before. And I was transferred to Toyama, Japan. I'll come back to this. And Toyama, I can remember where the barracks were, but I can't remember where the factory was.
Okay.
And that's not too uncommon. This is a picture of the barracks.
Sure. Okay.
I was there until the end of the war.
How many of you guys were there, POWs?
The ones that came with me on board the ship over, we didn't lose too many on the ship, but it was total hell. I mean, it was total hell. Sleeping in your own excrement, and other people's too, and naked.
We're treated like animals.
Oh, worse than an animal. And some of it was all the fault of the Japanese, and it was all the fault of them not being able to do anything better. And I try to be fair about everything. But it was hell. And I survived it, though. And not too many of us lost our friends on that ship. Not that I remember. But when the war was over, they had been bombing the city of Toyama just about every night. And it was just nothing but a sea of fire. Incendiary bombs. And
could you see that from where you were? Could you see?
Oh yes,
the fire
we could see the
raging
fire.
From where you
Yes,
were?
we absolutely could. And they bombed the factory also, but we're fortunate that we didn't lose any at the factory. And when the war was over, the camp commander, the Japanese camp commander, he told us that our camp commander, the American camp commander, that the war was over. And it was shortly after that that we started getting supplies in. They were dropping food to us. And
could you describe a little bit more, if you can, what was that like when so as the U.S. camp commander says, guys, the war is over. Was there immediate change in how you were treated, or did you feel you could walk around wherever you want? I mean, probably no place to go, but...
No, we couldn't walk around where we wanted, because our camp commander told us to stay in the barracks because he didn't want to lose anyone.
Okay.
But we had one that violated the rule, and he went into the city and he was killed. So, but they treated us pretty bad. No, bad.
Right.
Now, well, I'll get over to it.
So
when I flew out of Japan, every city was destroyed. And when I went back for the friendship visit...
That was last year, right?
Last year. I went with the condition that I could go back to Yokkaichi so that I could deliver a letter to the president of the company to deliver another letter to his family. because I felt a sense of guilt. He that had given us his food wrote me 5 years after the war was over, in substance, and I have his letter, asking for help. But I couldn't give him help because I was just not in the condition to do so.
Sure.
At the time. But then as life went along and I started to think about things in my old age and all, I started to feel a feeling of guilt. And I felt a very, very hard destination, or whatever you want to call it, to make some kind of an apology to the family. So my daughter, she got us a trip over there with the provision that we would go to Yokkaichi. We go to Yokkaichi, and the president of the company shut the factory down for a day. It's an international company. They have a branch in San Francisco now. But he set the factory down where we had worked for a day, and came in, and before us, he got on his knees with tears in his eyes and asked for forgiveness. Then I presented him with the 2 letters. And after we came back from the trip, about 3 weeks later, I received a letter from his son. And we've been communicating ever since. The war killed many of my friends. And it killed many, many of Americans. That was 70 years ago. The people that live there now, most of them don't even know anything about the war.
Right.
And how I can never forgive the ones that committed the atrocities against us. But I can't blame the people that are living there now, because they had nothing to do with it. They knew nothing about it.
I'm sure, I've never been to Japan, but I'm sure when you went on your friendship tour, that the landscaping of the city is nothing resembling of when you were there.
I flew over the city of, flew out of Japan to Formosa, then from there to Manila. But when I flew out over the country of Japan, there was not a city that hadn't been burned down. Wow. When I went back this time, and it was just immaculately clean. I mean, just absolutely well manicured.
Their citizenry takes pride in their country like American takes pride in theirs.
Absolutely.
You know, we always like to save a few minutes at the very end for our veterans to pass on a message to folks that they've touched with over the years that they served, or maybe people that are thinking about joining the military, people that are currently serving. So, Darrell, at this time I want to give you the microphone, and any message that you'd like to put out there to anybody that may be watching, go right ahead, sir.
I don't discourage anyone from joining the military. I have deep feelings about some things, though. I have a great-grandson that is going in, and I'm proud of him. And I also have an adopted great-grandson. I adopted him, but it's just because out of love. Who heard me speak at the high school, his high school, and he joined the military. He's in it now. And I just hope that nothing ever happens to either one of them as a result of it. But I'm proud of our military, and I think all of us should be. I have had the best life a person could ask for. The 4 years of hell created a situation to where people wanted to help me and gave me responsibilities, and my life has been wonderful, and it's been that way because I constantly try to help other people.
That's great. I saw that you like to volunteer a lot, and you always go speak to students, and I think that's so inspirational. That's one of the reasons why we do the video, because you can't get this stuff in a book, and I think the young people have such a connection with the veterans because they grew up enjoying the peace that we enjoy today in our own country without having known war, if you will. Everything's always been, other than 9/11, but everything's been off the shores of this great country. So thank you again for your service.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You are a true inspiration and American hero. I'm State Senator Kevin Witkos with U.S. Army Corporal Darrell Stark, retired. I'm glad he had the fortitude to see through all the things that he went through, and it's because of dedication and resolution and things like that that we're able to do what we can do today in our own country. So thank you for your service, sir. See you next month on Senator Witkos' Veterans Corner.